Natural sources make the best substitutes and act as a bridge as we seek to redesign our agricultural systems.
Anything that's heirloom will assimilate the most minerals, like when you use C90, so you'll raise your bricks the fastest. Then your hybrid crosses are second best. And then anything that's traded will assimilate the least amount of minerals with the least amount of bricks influence.
Wow. What are the steps in that process?
First step is activate your native soil life with enzymes. Number two is balance your calcium and deliver ocean minerals that's going to fuel the entire soil microbiome. I mean, that is the fuel source that allows the soil life to be fruitful and multiply. And number three is balance your NPK needs per said crop we're growing.
And what role are ocean minerals fulfilling in helping us to get to that ultimate destination?
And what is it doing in the rumen? The mineral salt is connecting the feedstuffs and the minerals in the cow's rumen to the microbiome. It's also allowing that microbiome to be fruitful and multiply. So always remember that your salt is your connector. Question is, if salt's that important in a rumen, now how important do you think it is for soil? Very.
All that and more on this episode 418 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by C90 Ocean Minerals.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag studios. Very excited to be joined once again by Lynn Hoover. He is a wealth of information, and there is a lot of paradigm-challenging content packed into this episode. Really appreciate him taking the time to join me once again and to talk about the role of ocean minerals in our agricultural systems. We have those options that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, right? We can just increase our efficiency with the nutrients that we have. We can substitute the nutrients that we're using for things that are more closely aligned to the natural systems, or we can redesign the whole system. I think salt, C90 ocean minerals are a great substitute and help us to get closer to the natural things that God has provided and can function in these agricultural systems as a bridge to help us as we are seeking to redesign our systems, and maybe even more than that. So really excited to welcome Lynn back to the Working Cows podcast. And here is my conversation with Lynn Hoover. Lynn, thanks for joining me again on the Working Cows podcast. Welcome back.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again, Clay. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I really have enjoyed the opportunity to get to know you a little bit through the connection with C90 and some of the stuff that they're doing. So let's just catch people up a little bit, kind of your background and industry experience in how you've been involved with some of these things like C90 and its relationship to soil and livestock health.
Yeah, so I think the last time we talked, most guys probably know by now, but yeah, I grew up on a dairy farm back in Pennsylvania and worked there in a partnership for, I think it was about 10 or 15 years, and then also with Dad early on. And then the last, about 10 years now, I've been working, home is now Oklahoma, and been working all across the country, really targeting the Midwest and Great Plains areas. And then as far as with C90, I mean, I've had about 20 years of experience now with the actual product, both, as a farmer and still with our little farm here we got in Oklahoma, but also just, all classes and different kinds and sizes of farms all across the nation, which has been really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. As you kind of think back on 2024, what did you think of how things kind of ended up in 2024 as far as markets and some of those things as it relates to farming across your area of experience?
So on the commodity side, I mean, it's probably been definitely more challenging than it's been for a little while for probably most guys. On I guess the cattle side, I guess the dairy and the beef guys are doing probably the best of all the areas. although there's lots of challenges there still as well as there usually is. But I think guys are. I mean, a lot of my guys I work with. I mean, I don't think they're going to be okay. They're not saying they ain't pinching some pennies and shaving some things, but they're going to be okay. So that has me excited.
Yeah, good. That's always good to hear. Um, what are you thinking the farmers are seeing kind of as we look forward to 2025 here, kind of talking in the first quarter of 2025? What are people thinking as far as planting and some of those things going into that part of this season?
In the world of row crops, I mean, I think a lot of guys, at least in my circles, I mean, a lot of people are up in the air on which direction to go, but it looks like corn keeps gaining a little bit of strength. So, provided the liquidity's there for guys, I mean, I think there's going to be quite a bit of that planted. On the As far as like inputs, I mean, we got some guys, we're trying to be careful with budgets, so there's certain things that we're dialing back by a couple percentage points. Just to try to meet a good budget and have some black ink at the end of the year. So, I mean, here again, in all the crop programs that we've helped guys build, I mean, the guys are pretty optimistic that they're going to do well. Good Lord willing, provided the weather helps us out too. So,
Yeah, for sure. What are some things that farmers can do to put themselves in the best position to be stable going forward?
I mean, as always, just keep your inputs in line. I mean, really, like, as if you're doing row crop industry, I mean, pull some soil tests. If you got enough of a nutrient, let's put it to work and bring it home. I mean, if we're in the cattle industry, I mean, anything we can do to harvest forage at better timings is going to reduce the protein purchase needs, the molasses or sugar type needs to drive rumen function. It'll drive feed efficiency. So on the livestock side, I mean, those are big things. I probably said this before when we talked, but I mean, I've seen as high as 10, 15, 20% reduction in needed feeds and forages. To me, those are big numbers. So yeah, there's lots of things that can be done to, become more efficient. It's just that we got to dig into what we got to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. In a livestock operation, the feed is generally one of the top line items in the budget. And so if you could talk about saving 15, 20% on that, that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What are some of the mechanisms there? What are some of the things that you've seen play into that savings?
So the biggest thing is understanding the role of starting with calcium. The more, adequate calcium in the soil, to keep it really simple on a percent base saturation, 65 to 75% base saturation are pretty good round numbers. And then because your calcium determines your total volume of yield, and it also determines your a lot of your mineral connection. And then, like your salts and phosphoruses are also important. I mean, that's what helps to drive calcium availability and your true mineral density of your forage. So those are probably the big three that I've learned. And then potassium, in all my forage guys, I try to keep potassium extremely, I'm going to say, I'll use the word temperate. And like, if we can get our calciums as high as we can get them and get our potassiums kind of, I'm going to call it temperate on the lower side. That drives livestock health, drives feed efficiency, rate of gains, and it just, the whole bottom line profit is what I've come to benchmark over the years.
Yeah, and so just kind of review there, so make sure people didn't miss it. When we're talking about feed savings, you're talking about putting salt on the ground, not just feeding it to the livestock. You're talking
Correct.
about C90 ocean minerals on the ground, and that is kicking up kind of relative feed quality and allowing people to get by on feeding less. Is that right?
Yeah. So when we start spreading the sea salt out on the fields, where we can make that work for guys. What happens is that is feeding your soil microbiome, both your bacteria and fungi. And the other thing it's really doing is your mineral salts help to really not just feed and make the biology more alive, but your calcium and phosphorus needs a lot of just soil life to come available. And the more alive that soil is, the more we can mobilize it. That's where you get your your carbon, your sugars to happen in your plants and your minerals. And then also by chemistry, everyone that's ever threw a salt block in a concrete trough, knows it works on the calciums and mags, right? And so the more of that's in the soil without being excessive, right, is going to mobilize more calcium, which now the plant can uptake, which is it's really pretty neat when you watch the whole system work. I mean, it gets pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Early on, you mentioned soil tests. Make sure that if you've got enough of a nutrient, which from other conversations I've had, it sounds like nutrients are oftentimes there in the soil. It's just getting those microbiology to go to work for you to open them up. But before we talk a little bit more about the microbiology and the role that they're playing, tell me about some of the soil tests that you prefer and recommend.
So basically, there's a lot of good companies out here, and I'm not going to take away from that. I mean, and I'm a kind of a keep it simple kind of guy. I mean, I've been taught in my life that there's no sense gathering information if we can't make management decisions off of it. And I say that very confidently, and I'm not against some of these people and companies that do the really extensive tests. They can teach something, but I like Midwest Labs is who I work with, and I just use the standard S3C test. And that gives me your P1, P2, Olsen if we're alkali, gives me all the percent base saturation, micronutrients, as well as a nitrogen, calculation. And basically, I have come to learn that I can guide a grower extremely well using just that test, and can tell. I've compared them with enough Haney tests and other tests that, I mean, that's a simple, cheap, affordable test that I can make really good decisions for the grower, help him make good decisions, and just add to his bottom line. And we can basically, what I'm going to call buy and apply, and put to work just with that simple S3C test.
Yeah. What are some of those kind of key numbers and ranges that you're keeping an eye on?
So, starting with like phosphorus, really like to see the P1 to P2 numbers be the P2 to lead P1 by 1.5 to 2, ideally. That means we have good phosphate release. And I've also come to learn sometimes it's not the volume of phosphorus that plays as key of a role as the spread. So the ratio sometimes matters the most. And so if you have low phosphorus numbers, we don't always necessarily have to even go look for phosphorus, and that's can be a savings all by itself. On potassium, I really like to see, like on parts per million, I'm a pretty temperate potassium guy. About 100 to 125 ppm is kind of, I like to keep it in that range. Typically, there are a few exceptions to the rule. By percent base saturation, 2 to 5%. If we're growing forage, the lower the better, within reason. On magnesium, on a percent base saturation, I like to see roughly 10 to 15. Is I consider that to be plenty. And then calcium, 65 to 75% base saturation, and then sodium, I like to see sodium 1% to 3%, kind of in that range. And what I find on the salt or the sodium side is the higher that number is, without being excessive, the more fertility we can retain in that acre of land, and the more nutrients we're typically going to move into the plant. And so thereby, we tend to get, cautiously saying this, but confidently, typically a yield bump with a fertilizer efficiency, and then definitely, we're going to align with better forages, better mineral density for the forages, provided, we're doing our part as the farmer rancher to harvest them according.
Yeah, can you give me some examples as if you were on somebody's operation, in person? What would you kind of recommend for grazers, row croppers, different types of operations, and some of those things that you'd be keeping an eye on?
For instance, where we can, so a grazing pasture is different than a hay meadow. Okay, so just make sure we don't get these confused. In a grazing pasture, C90, whether you spray it liquid or dry spread it can be considered a complete fertilizer program. And the reason is we are going to fuel the azobacter bacteria, which is your nitrogen processing bacteria. We're going to feed, fuel, and multiply your mycorrhiza fungi, which is your phosphate managers. And we're also going to, salt has the ability to transmutate and create potassium as needed, if it's needed. But I don't like very much potassium in a pasture because that's what lignifies your grasses, or even legumes, and makes them, unpalatable to the cow as they age. And then you're getting some sulfur and all your trace elements as well out of the C90 in a pasture. So that's a complete fertility program in a grazing pasture. Now, hay meadow, a little different because we're taking, down to 4 inches or whatever. Um, so we're still going to need to make sure, we're balancing, some NPK needs there, according. Here again, still really tempered on the potassium. But here again, the sea minerals are going to do great things there. We want to make sure if it's a legume, that we're checking our calciums. And that's true also in a pasture. But in a pasture setting, if we're not applying commercial nitrogen, I've seen C90 recharge the calcium in the soil, so that's been pretty exciting as well. And then in the world of row crops, and I'll just kind of, say corn, corn, milo, sorghums, wheat, small grains, kind of lump them all into one, and then maybe soybeans and alfalfa is kind of its own. I mean, I treat alfalfa kind of separate because it's a really a forage crop. At least most times it is. But so there we typically have a blanket spread of 100 pounds of C90 to the acre, sometimes 200, but 100's kind of the sweet spot. And that'll generally create about 40 pounds of nitrogen is what we've benchmarked on all of our soil testing. I have seen it create more than that, but I feel confident in recommending this 40. It really tends to, here again, it's going to make our phosphate more efficient because we're feeding the mycorrhiza. So we can typically buy with a little bit less phosphate. We are definitely leaning out the potassium on the row crop, which is a good thing because excessive potassium is what creates a lot of our broadleaf weed growth that don't want to die. It can launch insect attacks as well as disease. So potassium being temperate is really important all across agriculture, in my opinion, in 8 out of 10 scenarios. Then the other thing is you're here again, the C minerals, the C90 will really mobilize calcium. And here again, available calcium determines your total volume of yield. So that's what gives you how long your ears are going to be, your wheat head, small, barley, whatever you're growing, your sets going up to soybean, your alfalfa height, how close the leaves are on the alfalfa, on those stems. So in all three kind of categories there, the C minerals play a great role of what the C90 can really do for the typical producer there.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by testing. So do you have a frequency of testing that you recommend?
You mean as far as soil goes or forage?
Soil testing, yeah. So
frequency, I mean, if we're trying to do, close benchmarking, when we can do, year by year. However, if you kind of get comfortable with where you're at, then we can go every other year. And typically I tell guys, and every farmer knows his operation better than anyone. I say, get me soil tests that are representative of, per said field, per said crop, and I know different parts of the country, like for instance, here in Oklahoma, I mean, I work with growers that, we might have a 80 or 100 acre field and it can go from 8 CEC at one part of the field all the way up to 40 in another part. So we kind of, separate that because those are pretty big spreads. And so, that would be an example of, breaking it up a little bit. But if it's very similar ground, treated the same, been managed the same, I mean, we don't got to get, into, grid samples or nothing, unless that's what you want to do. We can do that, but we can work with either way.
Soil microbiome is kind of the manager of the underground economy, and bacteria manages nitrogen like the azotobacter. You mentioned that mycorrhiza fungi helps with the phosphorus release and some of those things. So if we can improve the way that bacteria and fungi health is working, then the N and the P pieces will also progress. I mean, those are some of the major inputs on most row crops and even in a lot of different places where they're fertilizing pasture, where that makes sense, at least ostensibly makes sense economically. So what are kind of we've talked kind of about some of these things, but what else is there out there, or what other options do we have from the perspective of helping to stimulate some of that local bacteria and fungi?
So let me, I guess, answer I guess make this statement before we get to that exact answer to that question is, so the soil is made up of two, a lot of companies and different folks are trying to isolate fungi and bacteria, which I'm not saying it's all wrong. However, for here again, to keep this kind of simple for growers, this is all we need to know as growers. There's two basic parts of the soil: bacteria, which manages our nitrogen, fungi, which manages our phosphate. Every nutrient except nitrogen enters in the phosphate form. Okay, and to keep it really simple. The other thing to understand is if we're growing an orchard, the said microbiome will go towards the trees or whatever you're growing. If we're growing corn, the microbiome is going to track towards said bacteria, fungi for corn. Likewise with alfalfa, and the list goes on and on. So that being said, nature's already managing that for us. So as long as we just know what to deliver this to feed it and fuel it, which is going to be calciums, phosphates, sea minerals, etc. I mean, it's going to be okay. We don't got to stay up at night worrying about that. Now, to answer products to stimulate that, from all the research I've done and being in this industry of biostimulants now for 20 years, is enzyme or stabilized microbes. Some guys call them enzymes. Some guys call it, stabilized microbes, kind of which came first, chicken or the egg. It's kind of all the same. But those stabilized products are the real McCoy, because those are the ones that are going to feed the native life. If the product's not stabilized, like an enzyme or microbe, and it's not feeding the native microbiome, the chances are in production agriculture, it's going to do very little for you, simply because those ones that are live are way too unstable to make it through perhaps said spray rig, planter, whatever other delivery system you may be using. And if it hits this said fertilizer or this said herbicide or whatever, it just totally messes it up. So those are what we have boiled down to be the real. If you're going to spend money on feeding the native microbiome, those are the products you want to look for. And that is very critical, because that area of agriculture has been very vague and dark. As I said last time we were on here, I mean, ProSol, I've worked with that one for soon to be 20 years. That's a great one. C90 now has one that's Omri that is 5-star as well, that I'm really excited about. That's going to do well. That'll fit right into their growers and dealership network. So those are really exciting things that we now have in our tool belt to use going forward.
Yeah, that's a new product from C90 then?
Yes, yeah, there's C90. It's C90 biostimulant, and that's going to have some quite a bit of ocean minerals with it from the C90 side there, and then it's going to be a stabilized microbial product enzyme that will, it'll ride. It can be used for conventional ag as well as Omri growers, and so it'll ride with or without herbicides, with or without fertilizers.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on Omri for those who are not unaware?
Yeah, so Omri is just for the folks that are growing certified organic, and so everything in the C90 lineup, if it's in their product lineup, it is certified organic, which means it fits every last class of agriculture, which is exciting.
So, kind of maybe walk me through your approach, or your preferred approach to soil health and profitable farming.
So basically, I try to break it down into 3 easy steps, really, because I feel that this gets really, really muddy, with the whole microbiology thing, and so I've broken it down into 3 easy steps, and that is first step is activate your native soil life with enzymes. Okay, that could be a product like ProSol, could be the C90 product, product of your choice. I mean, we love to be part of your program, but we realize that we can't be all things to all people. Number 2 is balance your calcium and deliver ocean minerals that's going to fuel the entire soil microbiome. I mean, that is the fuel source that allows the soil life to be fruitful and multiply. Okay. So make sure you find, if you need calcium, a good calcium carbonate product. C90 is an excellent ocean mineral product. So that covers number 2. And number 3 is balance your NPK needs per said crop we're growing. So like you test with a typical any lab, I mean, they can give you general recommendations for what a crop needs, NPK wise. And from Midwest, I got minimum targets for phosphorus set at 23 pp1. So we need to at least kind of have that ideally. I mean, and then 125 ppm as kind of a floor for K for potassium. And then understand that the C90 is going to bring you all your trace elements, including boron, brings about 10 pounds of sulfur or so. And as far as nitrogen goes, your nitrogen becomes extremely more efficient when you partner with the C90 because nitrogen is an electrolyte and so is your salt. So that's the other way you drive your efficiencies higher, as the more correct mineral salts you have in the soil, the less nitrogen you need to have, because they're both pulling the train for you as far as electrolytes moving the plant. So that's my 3, simple steps I try to, help and educate growers with to try to, just keep this thing real easy.
Activate native soil life, balance calcium and ocean mineral needs, and then balance any remaining NP&K adjustments. That's kind of the approach, right?
Yep.
And I think
1, 2, 3.
I think I've heard somebody talk about the fact that boron, almost every acre of American agricultural land is deficient in boron or is in need of something in that regard. Does that ring true in your experience?
Yeah. There's been a few parts of the country I've been at that boron is, adequate, but yes, it typically tends to be deficient. And so the C90 does bring a nice natural source of boron, which typically meets the needs. However, I do got some growers that still want to add in certain cases, and that's okay. But yes, that's a very true statement. Boron's another one that is a calcium mover, which is really, really important.
Can you give me some examples of different operations where you've kind of walked them through this process and some of the difference it's made, even maybe the difference you've seen year over year in soil tests and some of those things?
So the folks that are using good biostimulant with the C90, typically what we see is better phosphate availability, less need for applied potassium. Whenever we do any sap testing or tissue testing, I mean, typically the profile is either more balanced or more available. We're seeing just better overall yields. We'll see typically better corn yields. Got some growers that have really proven to me that it's very possible to get 8 to 10 bushel per 1,000 plants of corn. And so in order to be efficient, if you're not in that class, one of two things: you could be overpopulating, or maybe we don't got our agronomy right. But I've been proving that over and over working in the Great Plains. And seed cost is very expensive. And so on the row crop side, I mean, there's a savings that, if you're in the 260 bushel class, I mean, you could literally drop, 28,000, lose a few, and still hit 260 bushels. What's been my experience, So that's a big thing. The other thing is, like in forage production, typically we're going to see a boost in tonnage, weather provided helping us out there. It's got to do its part, with irrigation in some cases, but I do a lot of dry land stuff. So we typically get a boost in tonnage and hay yield. And then if we're managing our cut schedules, I mean, we're always getting, a boost in quality, total mineral density, and all that. So, I mean, that's a great savings on the other side of the checkbook for the other purchases. So that gets pretty exciting. I mean, I love to feed cows. I mean, that's probably my greatest passion. So.
Yes, sir. Yep. Getting them what they need. Yeah. And letting them go out and find it in the pasture themselves is great thing too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like cows. Cows an intelligent creature that if we take time to observe what they're, trying to communicate, I mean, there's a lot to be learned there as a cattleman.
Yeah. Have you seen kind of a difference year over year in soil tests as people start to adopt this approach?
Yes. Typically we're retaining more calcium, and we've been buying less phosphorus and potash. I mean, is the big savings typically, and there's always a little, depends on where we're at on the map and some other factors, but I mean, I've seen some pretty big things.
One of the challenges it seems like is common in a lot of places, especially row crops. It seems like everybody's fighting a war with with fungus, fungal diseases, and some of those things. So, what are some of the benefits here from the more natural approach or less synthetic inputs and some of those things?
So been digging into that for many years now, and this is what we've learned and come to the conclusion of so far. And it's been known for a long time that the more available your calcium and phosphorus is, which moves your bricks. Typically, a bricks over 10 will lower your disease impact. The other thing to understand is that your heirloom, anything that's heirloom, will assimilate the most minerals. Like when you use C90, so you'll raise your bricks the fastest. Then your hybrid crosses are second best. And then anything that's traded will assimilate the least amount of minerals with the least amount of bricks influence.
Wow.
Okay, so growers need to understand that. Then the next thing is chlorides. Okay, anything worse than salt is chlorides in agriculture, right? It's always the bad word, right? However, there's good chlorides and bad chlorides, good salts and bad salts, right? And basically, good, healthy, correct chlorides is what also can help keep a plant clean and healthy. And so with the C90, whether it's the dry spread or the liquefy your own or buy the LMC, liquid mineral concentrate, okay, the more healthy chlorides we deliver, okay, which is different than O60, the cleaner and healthier the plant will be just from that side. Now, the latest and newest, most exciting thing is C90 has developed a product running their liquid product through an analyte generator, and basically they're making isolating the chloride out of it, and it's at a pH of about 6.5 in there somewhere. And so it's not caustic to the plant, but yet it's I guess still stout enough that you can spray it on stuff like tar spot and other diseases, and it will stop the train of disease.
And that's applied like a foliar application after the plant's already growing?
Yes. Typically that one will have a little bit of systemic action, but I mean, it's not going to be like a lead time of, 2 or 3 weeks or anything like that. But yes, it works really good through a drone because this product can be applied straight, which is really heroic. A gallon to the acre will get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you just give me a little bit of an overview of, how that's working and where you've seen it used?
Yeah. So it originally started being tested several years ago, right here in Oklahoma, actually in eastern Oklahoma. And there was a young man that was, I guess, playing around with it on corn, soybeans, and wheat, and was having good success with it. And just was kind of watching that off and on. And then we took it to Illinois, Kentucky, and some other states around this past summer. And it definitely did, stop the tar spot, no matter where we put it. And it was even stronger than some of the other commercial fungicides, in my opinion, from what I observed. But it was working extremely well, and the growers were really excited to have something that will, stop tar spot.
So all of these things, these new products we've been talking about, are also going to be available March of 2025. So something that people can even use this season, right?
That's correct. Yes, both the C90 biostimulant and the fungicidal product from C90 will be available for this growing season.
And all organic, OMRI certified, or at least to have good reason to anticipate full organic approval on all that as well.
That is correct.
I think the most mind-blowing thing so far is what you said about the heirloom crops being the ones that take those things up the best, and then the hybrids are second best, and then the stuff that's traited, that is bred for a specific trait, is how I understood that, is the one that is the least able to take some of that stuff up. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that is very correct.
That's very interesting to me. All this was there from the beginning. God created a good system, and those heirloom plants are the ones that are best able to use it. And probably, it sounds like the most bang for your buck kind of a scenario, right?
Yes, absolutely. So whether you're growing, native grasses or could be even, I got guys growing heirloom alfalfas, old world grains that have not been improved much. I mean, when you put the C90 to those crops, I mean, those crops will literally, if you got the rest of your agronomy in line, literally what I call explode because you've finally given them what they're exactly looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, and this goes back to some of the discoveries of Maynard Murray, right? From fertility from the
Yes.
ocean deep and some of that stuff too. So that's way back. That's in the way back machine of the Working Cows podcast. But we'll have links to that in the show notes page for today, as well as your previous guest appearances as well, and kind of a one-stop shop for everybody who wants to see kind of the relationship between their soil health and livestock health and ocean minerals. So make sure you check that out wherever you're listening. It should be right there below, and find the links there. So what are some other things, or kind of, I mean, like I said, this is kind of a approach that covers all the bases. It's good for the livestock. You can feed it directly to them. Good for the soil. The plants that they eat that have been in contact with these products are going to be better for them. Tonnage increases. Kind of covered all the bases. Is there something else here that you'd like to point out?
Yeah, so I guess this is one of my most exciting things to I guess explain or talk to guys about all across the country, and that is every cattleman understands the importance of salt in a rumen, right? I mean that's pretty general understood, and so also if you understand by God's given design that soil biology, the soil microbiome, and rumen biology, the rumen microbiome, are really one and the same. Okay, they're built off the exact same principles. If you understand one, you understand the other. Obviously, the rumen's a little more complex because it's in a cow walking around, above ground walking around. But you can take the principles to one, apply it to the other. So the question becomes, okay, why is salt so important for a cow? And what is it doing in the rumen? The mineral salt is connecting the feedstuffs and the minerals in the cow's rumen to the microbiome. Okay. It's also allowing that microbiome to be fruitful and multiply. Okay. So always remember that your salt is your connector. Okay. So question is, if salt's that important in a rumen, now how important do you think it is for soil?
Hmm.
Very.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's going to do the same thing in the soil. It's going to not only fuel and multiply the entire soil microbiome, but it's going to connect it to plant residues, fertilizers, tied up minerals, manures that are being spread, etc. And so with that simple basic understanding, I mean, that gets really exciting. And that is why C90 is so key and so successful for the soil. And for the growers that are, willing to try this and I've had any really, I think I can confidently say I haven't had any that have been disappointed,
Hmm.
And because it's real and it works,
Yeah. Yeah. We've spread it once intentionally on one specific field that we planted, and everything lined up. I wouldn't have said it was an exceptional year from a moisture standpoint, but we grew some. My neighbor said, I didn't. It wasn't my assessment, but we grew some 10-foot tall sorghum in that field.
Wow.
Yeah, in western South Dakota, dry land,
Yeah.
and
That's
so
good.
yeah, and so yeah, it was a kind of amazing productivity that we saw there, and yeah, just kind of maybe as we point towards wrapping up here, just give a rundown of some of the portfolio that C90 offers, livestock, soil health, kind of some of the things. We've covered it all here today, but just kind of review some of that.
Yeah. So let's start with the livestock. So C90 offers their premium mineral salt, both loose and as well as in blocks. We also offer with garlic for, fleas, flies, ticks, lice, and that's both loose and in blocks. And then for the agronomy side, we have the regular dry spread raw minerals. We have dry raw spread with humates. Those are the dry products. And then we have our liquid mineral concentrate, which is a pre-liquefied product that you spray anywhere from a quart to a gallon to the acre. We find that's very nice for, the big row crop guys. We do have a dry product. It's called foliar mineralizer that can be dissolved on your own if you choose to go that route. And then we have now the biostimulant product, and that can be run pre, in furrow, or foliar. And then also, last but not least, is their brand new their fungicide based product. So,
yeah.
And that one, is, like I said, it's brand new. So,
yeah. Yeah. And it seems like C90 under the leadership of the Silic family is continuing to, pursue innovation in this space. So I'm sure continuing to work on products that will be available in the future as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, Lynn, appreciate it, and I know you're willing. And as a resource, if anybody's got questions, I've directed people to you in the past.
Yeah,
and so if you're comfortable with that, you can share some of your contact information and let people know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. My phone number is 717-580-1458, and then my email address is lynn.h@oceanblueagronomics.com.
Oh, very good. Lynn, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Clay.
Very good stuff there. Really appreciate Lynn taking the time to join me and to share his perspective on that and some of the things that he's learned working across a broad area of the United States, from east to the Great Plains, and kind of seeing the role that ocean minerals have played there. As I said earlier, another 3-episode week of the Working Cows podcast. And next on the Working Cows podcast, we're going to talk to Caroline Bohannon from the K-Rose Company about how we should think about the psychology of the people we're marketing to. Now, we're going to focus with her on bull sales and bull sale marketing. But I think you'll find that if you listen to this episode, it translates to other forms of marketing, and there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom that can be gained from these other people and places that we're trying to market our businesses to. So very, very much appreciate the perspective that Caroline shares on that episode, and look forward to sharing it with you real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.